Welcome! In this series of short videos, we will look at topics common to both the PowerBasic console and Windows compilers. Today, we will look at using command line parameters within your application. Today, we're looking at command line parameters. So what exactly are command line parameters? Well, when your application executes, we have the option of taking in some information on the command line, which can be parameters that your application can make use of. This is where your application is called from something else, perhaps from some scheduled task, or for some other application you have written, or perhaps from a third-party application. Now we can emulate some command line parameters coming into this application here from the Run menu. There's a set command line, and we can put information on this command line. These command line arguments or parameters will be sent to your application when your application runs. So how do we actually pick up this command line information? If we create a local variable, we can populate that with what's on the command line by using $. Command $ contains anything that's been passed to our application on the command line. So now we've picked up the command line and put it into a variable, let's display it to see what it has. And if we run our application now, we'll see that the two words first and second, which we set up to appear on the command line, have been accepted by your application, put into the variable and displayed on our log. This is quite a useful way for getting information into your application on the command line. Having got the information in the command line, you can quite easily use the parse command to slice up the command line string into individual variables. So having created two local variables to pick up our first and second parameter, we can use the parse command to pick them up. Now in this case, since we know what we're passing in the command line, basically two words, delimited by a space character. So we're using the parse command to parse the command line variable, for spaces, and to pick up the first element of that string, put it into the str first variable, the second element of the string goes into the second variable. And if we fire them out to the log, we can see that the first command line parameter and the second command line parameter are quite easily displayed. You'll need to pick your command line delimiter carefully, as some of the strings you may want to pass to your application may have embedded spaces in them. Now this approach works fine, but depends on the parameters being in the correct order. An alternative to this is to name the parameters. So if we amend our command line parameters and make them like this, we're giving the name of first to our first parameter and the name of second to our second parameter, and we're putting some data within quotes. This approach is more flexible in that if the order of the parameters actually changes, your application, since it's picking up by name, will still work quite successfully. In order to demonstrate this, we're going to add some libraries to our code. The file handling routines library we've covered before, and the PB shell library we've covered before. However, today we have a new library, PB command line. If we have a quick look at that, this library contains at the moment only one function. This function has the sole purpose in life of actually returning a named parameter from your command line. It's not a particularly complicated function, but it is one you'll get quite a lot of use out of. It's basically taking in two parameters, the name of the parameter you're looking for, and the entire command line string. It then does a case independent search on your command line to find the parameter you're actually looking for, using the end string to see if the named parameter you're looking for actually exists, and then a series of string commands to chop up the command line string and return the value you're looking for. So how can this be used in our actual code? Well, we know the string on the command line is going to look like this. It's going to have a slash, then the word first, then a hash key, then the data, and for the second parameter it's named second, and it has its own data. In theory you can create quite a number of long string parameters or numbers, and we're going to pick them up on our next line of code. So we take these two lines out. So to pick up our first parameter, we're calling the new function within our library. We're giving it the name of the first parameter. Now, as I said, it's a case-independent search. We know in the command line it's coming in with the word first, the first character of which is uppercase, the rest are lowercase. We're giving it all uppercase. As it's case-independent, it won't matter. We're then passing the str command variable, which contains the entire line. And if we do exactly the same for the second parameter, and in this case we're looking for second, and if we fire those both out to the log, displaying the first and the second parameters. So if we run that now, we'll see it has returned some new data and some more data as the first and second parameters. So we can quite easily see if the order of the parameters actually changes by putting the second parameter first and the first parameter second. The code doesn't need to change because it's pulling the variables out of the command line by name. This means if you're adding a third parameter and putting it between the first and the second parameters, your code will still work fine. Also, if you set the system up to look for a third parameter, which there isn't one, it will quite happily return an empty len string because it doesn't find it. If we run that now, we'll see the third parameter has nothing in it, because there is nothing on the command line. So your program runs quite happily without erroring. Let's assume you're writing a utility application, which once you've written it, can be used by yourself and many others. It may be used on desktop machines, may be used on server machines, and it will take a set number of parameters and perform some action. The output from our generic utility can be specified in one of the parameters. I've included in the download the generic pie chart generator we created in one of the previous videos. The task of the generic pie chart generator is to take 4 parameters. Using these 4 parameters, it will generate a pie chart based on the data you're giving it, and it will save that pie chart using the rmchart utility into a specified location, which is one of your parameters. So we can try that one from here. The generic pie chart generator is using the return named parameter function to pull back this file name path and to store it within the application. And this is where we specify the name and the location of the folder to save the image that contains the chart. The second parameter is legend, and this is the definition of the number of slices of the pie and what each slice is actually going to be called. The third parameter is the actual data itself. In this case, there are 3 slices of the pie with 3 numeric values, delimited by the pipe character. The final parameter is the title of the chart. And our final command line one here comes from the shell library, and we're basically just executing this command line string. So if we try running that now, we'll see that briefly on screen our pie chart gets generated and saved off to the file. if we have a look inside the folder, we'll see that the chart1.ping has actually been created. And if we open that up, we'll see that here is our generated pie chart with 3 slices of the pie, a title at the top of the screen, and each of the slices of the pie named and numbers showing with percentages. So taking this approach with command line parameters, you can quite happily build a number of generic utilities to perform many functions. Since we are currently running here the console application, the console application here has in fact called a PowerBasic Windows application, which is a pie chart generator, to generate the pie charts. So if you have a need for a background process to perhaps run on the server, pull information out of a database, and generate charts, this is the approach I would take. Command line parameters are also useful for many other utilities. If you have a need for a utility that deletes log files, then running this with the parameters in place would allow you to actually search out log files older than a certain date or time and automatically delete them. So as you will see, command line parameters are exceptionally useful. That's it for today. Thank you for watching.